Hey everyone, either welcome back or welcome to my channel. And in today's video, I'm actually going to be talking about the unpredictability of migraines and also showing you a scenario that is common for me as to show what unpredictability of migraines actually looks like. So before I get into any more details, time for the intro. Imagine this. You are doing work or trying to read something. The vision has black dots in it, or it might even be blurry. The text may also look funny. Now, the nausea starts. Pain around the eyes and an overwhelming desire to rest. This is how I feel when I'm getting a migraine. You don't always feel this way. There are many times actually where I may not necessarily get any symptoms at all. So when I might be, let's say I'm working on video editing or something, and then all of a sudden I get a really bad headache. Usually that means that I've actually probably started to have the pain phase of the migraine, but I may not necessarily have had the warning that I'm actually getting a migraine. I don't always get a warning, or sometimes the warning comes in the days preceding, and so you don't necessarily connect the dots until you've actually gone through the entire course of the migraine. Sometimes the migraines proceed really quickly, and other times they are actually pretty slow and can last for several days. Getting into the unpredictability of migraines, I think it's important to talk about just how different a migraine at one time can be from a migraine at another. So not only do you sometimes have different symptoms, but I honestly think that how it feels between each migraine, like when you're actually experiencing that migraine, is very different. There are times when I can push through something and function quite well, while at others it's hard for me to even bear being in the right now. When talking about the predictability of migraines, I think one of the most important things I can talk about is the difference in how sometimes you can feel a migraine actually coming, like you're pretty sure that you're at that point where you're right before the migraine, and at others you don't know exactly where you are. Like you could be at the end and you could be at the beginning. Now the reason why I say this is because a lot of the symptoms that I kind of have in that final phase of the migraine, when it does happen, and also in the first phase of the migraine when it does happen, a lot of those are shared. So if I don't get any pain, sometimes I think I've actually ended the migraine, but when I get pain, then it can be hard to tell, okay, was that the first phase? Was that the last phase? Should I be expecting a migraine now that I'm having trouble with all of these different things? And the reason why I say that is because the fatigue particularly can be in the first and final phase of the migraine. Sometimes I notice concentration issues at the first and final phase of a migraine. When you're in that cycle, and especially when I had a lot of migraines happening frequently, it was very difficult to tell exactly where I was in that particular sequence. And even now, sometimes it can be difficult because I'm not experiencing, or don't feel like I'm experiencing, the pain quite as severely as what I used to. Like sometimes I'll get those other symptoms, but then the pain doesn't come, and then it's really confusing. Another one that I really want to stress with this unpredictability of symptoms is even when you do absolutely everything right, you can still get migraines. Even in that case, there are just some things that you never figure out what exactly is causing it. Not only do you maybe not identify those triggers, but there are just times where I honestly believe that that bucket, as I talked about in the bucket theory, when I talked about that, is just so full that literally almost anything can make that bucket spill over. And the most simplest of things, which are often, I think, probably some of those triggers we never do really find out because they don't happen frequently enough, or at least that's my hypothesis, that the bucket spills over and you have a migraine because you don't know exactly what all is causing that in that particular case. I know for me, when it comes to finding out different triggers, it takes quite a few times before I connect the dots and go, okay, that's maybe a very consistent way that I'm actually getting and is causing a migraine. Now, I know they suggest doing headache journals and all of that. I never really have done that, and I'll tell you the reason why I haven't done that. So let's say I was to do a headache journal and was to say, okay, I know I had a migraine here. This is what all was happening that day. But how do you narrow it down to it's just these particular things? You would have to have that particular scenario happen quite frequently in order to go, okay, yes, that's definitely potentially a cause. Otherwise, how do you honestly know? How can you honestly narrow it down when you have so many possible triggers coming from all different directions all of the time? How do you narrow it down, some of those really small things that could definitely possibly be a thing, but you can't really control for it, so you can't really figure out exactly if that is causing a migraine or not. If you're enjoying my content, please feel free to subscribe. Remember that it's completely free. It just allows us to reach more people with IIH and migraines. When you're subscribing, don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss any of my upcoming future content. If you enjoyed this particular video, be sure to give it a like. If you're watching this on Facebook or Instagram, be sure to like and follow. And as for now, that's it for today. Bye, everyone.